Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, thanks for coming here today. Mr. Gwynn, Vice Chair Barr notes that the U.S. banking system became significantly more capitalized following the great financial crisis, which is true. With that, he's trying to sell the idea that greater capitalization, the better capitalized U.S. banks experience lower funding costs, are more profitable, and have gained more market shares in global markets for financial products relative to their global competitors. Are you aware of any study that has shown a causal connection between U.S. banks' capitalization and their global competitiveness?
I'm not aware of any such study at all, Congressman.
So what's Vice Chairman Barr talking about?
So I think he's speculating. Now, he said he did a holistic review of capital requirements, but he's yet to release what the data and what the conclusions are. Maybe he will actually release those after he has the data from the banks that I guess they're now looking at. I hope that they do, because there does need to be a lot more justification for why capital needs to be raised. As you know, as discussed earlier in this hearing, it's a trade-off. You can have perfectly safe banks, but no lending to and other banking services, or you can have unsafe banks and a lot of lending and other banking services. What we're trying to do is we're trying to hit the right balance. And the question is, we've been increasing capital now for a number of years. Are we at that right balance, or do we need to have still more capital? It's not cost-free, despite what some people say. And in our view, until someone shows that the benefits of that increased capital is higher than the extra cost, then I don't think that this proposal should go forward.
Well, let me ask you this question. I think it was raised earlier in this hearing that U.S. banks are still competitive compared to their international counterparts, even with the extended regulatory and capital requirements that we've enacted in the United States since 2008. Different way of looking at that. Are U.S. banks more competitive to other other ways of raising capital, i.e. private equity, venture cap funds, other private endeavors that actually don't have to deal with Basel requirements or have to deal with the burden of the regulatory system in the United States?
Yes, that's a very good question. And in fact, one of the consequences of this will be to continue the trend of having non-bank financial institutions have a greater and greater share of the credit provided in the U.S. economy. So in 1980, that was about 30%. It's now close to 60%. And as you increase...
Mr. Gwynn, I don't want to cut you off, but we're in a congressional hearing. Sometimes we have to restate these things.
No problem.
In 1980, private access to credit, meaning not through the banking system, was 30%. It is now 60%. I mean, Mr. Baer, do you agree with this assessment that the more we do this, it's actually going to continue to shrink the regulated banking system in the United States because people are smart and they're just going to say, why am I doing business this way? I'll just do it another way and get around the federal government. And I'll add before you answer that, Mr. Baer, my problem with the government overall is that the government has become omnipotent busybodies who think they know everything, and they don't. Silicon Valley Bank is a testament to that. Mr. Baer.
Well, sometimes I think of myself as an omnipotent busybody, but I won't take that personally. No, I mean, certainly we have seen in certain asset classes, an incredible rise in private equity, private debt, certainly non-bank mortgage. And, some would say, oh, that's a problem because they're not regulated like banks. I mean, that may be a problem. I think the larger problem, and we've seen this, is that they are not durable lenders like banks. The reason we have banks is because they take in deposits, which are relatively stable funding. They have access to a discount window, which is emergency funding, and that lets them lend money cheaper, and it lets them lend money under stress. And so the question is, regulation aside, what's going to happen under stress with these lenders when they don't have any real stable funding to do that? And I think what we're going to see, and we've already seen in capital markets, is well, it's actually the government that steps in. We saw that in the Treasury market, which forever had been advertised as the most liquid market in the world, and we had the Fed intervene as the market maker of last resort, a phrase that didn't exist pretty long ago, in both 2019 and 2020, and begin trading the bonds. So I think the drift from banks is a concern, initially because of cost and stability, but then also because of government.
Mr. Baer, well, real quick, Chairman, I know I got 15 seconds. Mr. Kress, thank you for being here. In your opening statement, you essentially said that, and I'm paraphrasing, that because of the fact that the United States government has stepped into the position of bailing out banks, it is also the position of the United States government to make sure that banks are appropriately capitalized, so we don't have to go into that business again. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, if you indulge me,
Judge,
you indulge me real quick, Mr. Chairman?
we can have him submit the answer for the record.
I'll just pose this question to the witness. The question is this: if that's the premise, then why don't we stop bailing out banks? And why don't we actually look at the regulatory system itself so banks aren't in a position
Gentleman's
to
time has
distress?
expired.
I yield.
Submit that for the record.